What is up everyone? Welcome to the Great Onigiri Man channel. Recently, I've been mad enough to start the One Piece anime from the very beginning. On New Year's Eve 2022, my girlfriend and I started the first episode of an over 1,000 episode series. And we found ourselves talking non-stop about the world of One Piece ever since. This video is the first in a long series in which I'm going to rate and rank every single One Piece arc. We'll start each video by going through what happens in each arc, pointing out its highs and lows, and then at the end of each video, we'll give the arc a score out of 10 in 10 different categories, in order to get a total overall score out of 100. We'll then put it on a scoreboard and see where it stacks up against other arcs that we've covered, until we have every One Piece arc ranked from best to worst. If you enjoy these videos and want to see me cover more arcs, please consider giving the video a like, subscribing to the Great Onigiri Man channel, and using the scoring system to comment below your ranking of each arc. I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are on each arc as we go along as well. And with that, let's get started. Every series has a beginning, and for One Piece, it's Romance Dawn. The Romance Dawn arc was only 3 episodes in the anime, and 7 chapters in the manga, which is absurdly short for a One Piece arc. Nonetheless, every arc is getting its own dedicated video. I'll primarily be considering the anime of each arc, but where there's big differences in the manga, I will definitely be covering it as well. For example, in this particular arc, there are some major backstories that are moved to later in between arcs in the anime, and so I'll be considering them part of the Romance Dawn arc, like the manga intended. I should also mention, being as long as it is, the One Piece anime started in 1999, and so obviously the animation started off a bit rough and got better as it went on. So when rating each arc, I will be doing it relative to its time period, in order to get a fair rating for earlier arcs. The Romance Dawn arc starts off with a brief introduction to the infamous King of the Pirates, Gold D. Roger. Wealth, fame, power. He attained everything this world had to offer. And at his execution, he uttered his final words: "My treasure. If you want it, you can have it. I left everything in one place. You just have to find it." What happens next actually depends on whether you're reading the manga or watching the anime. In the manga, we're introduced to Luffy, the main character, as a young child, as well as the red-haired pirates. This is where we meet red-haired Shanks for the very first time. Luffy stabs himself in the face to try and prove how serious he is about wanting to join Shanks' crew and become a pirate, but Shanks tells him he's just too young. There's this great scene where mountain bandits come into the bar looking for alcohol that the red-haired pirates are drinking, and there's none left except for one bottle Shanks has. He kindly offers it to the mountain bandit leader before having the favour smashed over his head. The bandits walk away laughing and leave Shanks on the floor. Then there's a brief period of silence before the whole crew, including Shanks, burst out laughing. This pisses Luffy off big time, as he didn't understand why they didn't fight back. Shanks explains he didn't need to retaliate, and that needless killing doesn't make you a man. This scene's important because it comes up again much later in the series. During all the commotion, Luffy casually eats a fruit he finds in a treasure chest, sitting on the bar that belongs to the red-haired pirates. It isn't long before the crew realise that Luffy's body has started stretching. They shit themselves, and go on to explain that anyone who eats a so-called devil fruit is cursed by the devil of the sea and can never swim again. The particular fruit that Luffy ate was the gum fruit, which turns the person who ate its body into rubber. Later on, the bandit returns, kidnaps Luffy, rows out into the ocean and chucks him in to try and drown him. As he does so, a giant sea creature, or Sea King, emerges and chomps his ass before starting to head towards Luffy. Shanks races in and saves the day in the nick of time and scares it off with a stern look. Wink, wink. Shanks tells Luffy it's okay and that he can stop crying. Luffy points out that Shanks is missing a fucking arm after the Sea King bit it off. Shanks responds with, "It's a small price to pay. It's just an arm. I'm glad you're okay." Fast forward some time, and the red-haired pirates are later setting sail after spending months on this island. They say goodbye to Luffy and the islanders before Shanks goes and gives Luffy his straw hat and says, "Give this back to me one day when you become a great pirate." Fast forward 10 years, and Luffy's leaving the island himself in order to start his own pirate crew. On his way out of the island, he sees the same Sea King that came at Luffy when Shanks jumped in, and he one-hit KOs him before heading on his merry way. Not long after he sets sail, Luffy's little rowing boat gets sucked up into a whirlpool, and then we're introduced to a little puss boy called Kobe. This is where the anime actually starts, by the way, and we get that Shanks backstory later on in between arcs for some reason. We learn that Kobe's basically a pirate named Alvida's little bitch, but his goal is to join the navy and stop pirates. Alvida's crew board a cruise ship to pillage it, and a barrel is fished up out of the ocean. We see this ginger chick sneak on board Alvida's ship, steal a bunch of treasure, and then make off with a small boat while all this is going down. Surprise, motherfucker, it's me! In short, Luffy basically calls Alvida a fat bitch and then sends her into orbit. Kobe tags along with Luffy, and they head for a nearby island called... what the fuck was that called again? Shell's Town. That supposedly has a pirate hunter named Zoro being held captive by the navy. When Luffy learns that he's supposed to be super strong, he decides there and then that this guy's going to join his crew. They reach Shell's Town and find out that Zoro has been tied to a cross in the middle of the navy's courtyard without food for 9 days. As Luffy and Kobe are looking over the wall into the courtyard, they watch a little girl run in and sneak Zoro an onigiri. She gets caught by a guy from the navy called Himelpo, and he's the son of a navy captain called Captain Morgan. Himelpo grabs the onigiri from the girl, takes a bite, tells her it's fucking terrible, and that she used sugar instead of salt. He stomps the onigiri into the mud before getting a navy soldier to yeet her back over the wall. When the coast is clear, Luffy waltzes in and tells Zoro that he's going to save him and that he's going to join his crew. Zoro declines and explains that if he lasts being tied up for a month, the navy said they would let him go. As Luffy's about to leave Zoro, in extreme hunger, he asks Luffy to feed him the girl's onigiri that's been stomped into the ground and is basically a ball of mud at this point. Zoro eats it and says, "Tell the girl it was delicious, and that I ate every bite." What a badass. Luffy goes back to the village and speaks to the little girl. She explains that the navy are lying about letting Zoro go after a month, and that they're in fact planning to kill him when he's weak from hunger. She also explains that the only reason he got in trouble in the first place is because he saved her from Himelpo's dogs who attacked her. Luffy goes and talks to Zoro again, explains the situation, and Zoro asks him to go and retrieve his confiscated swords from the navy base. Luffy smashes a giant statue of Captain Morgan, uses Himelpo as a meat shield, and finds Zoro's swords and gives them back to him just before they get attacked by Captain Morgan and his navy soldiers. The boys go to town on Morgan and his soldiers, and we learn that Zoro uses 3 swords, one in each hand and one in his mouth. What a badass. In the manga, we see a brief flashback showing us Zoro's backstory of how when he was young, he had a sparring partner called Kuina. They promised each other one day that one of them would grow up to become the world's strongest swordsman. Kuina, however, died the following day after falling down a flight of stairs, leaving Zoro to spend the rest of his days tirelessly pushing himself to fulfill the promise he made. This full flashback comes again at a later stage of the anime for some reason, in between arcs. Going back to the fight in Shell's Town, Zoro calls Luffy captain for the first time, implying that he's agreed to join the crew, and once they've kicked the shit out of Morgan and Himelpo, the navy soldiers celebrate, and explain that they hated Morgan and that he was a big dickhead. The guys all then head back to the village where the locals celebrate by treating them to food and drink. Luffy explains that he's going to assemble a crew and head for the Grand Line, because he's after the legendary treasure, the One Piece. Kobe yaps a bunch about how it's basically suicide and the world's strongest pirates are there. Then not long after that, the navy rock up to the bar and explain that although they're grateful for them saving the town, they can't shelter pirates. As a sign of gratitude, they agree not to report them to navy headquarters. As Luffy and Zoro are leaving, Kobe is asked by the navy, "Aren't you gonna go with them?" Kobe says he's not one of them, and then to make it believable, Luffy spurs Kobe on into punching him. Luffy then punches Kobe a few times before the navy demand they leave now, and that they've made it clear he's not one of them. All this so Kobe can request to join the navy without them knowing he was connected to Luffy. Cody asks there and then if he can join the navy, and out of respect, they let him join. As Luffy and Zoro are about to head out in a small boat at the dock, they hear Kobe shouting from behind them, thanking them for all they've done for him. Zoro and Luffy turn around to see Kobe as well as all the Navy soldiers on the island standing and saluting them as they sail off on their adventure. One of the Navy soldiers then announce as punishment, none of them will eat for 2 weeks to make up for saluting a pirate. So, there's a lot more to this arc than I really thought there'd be, particularly if you're including the Shanks stuff from the manga. There are plenty of highs in this arc. We see Luffy get his devil fruit powers. We see Luffy get a straw hat from Shanks, with the promise to give it back to him one day when he becomes a great pirate. Shanks loses an arm, and Luffy sets sail as a pirate and recruits Zoro, the first member of his crew other than himself. The lows in this arc come from the lack of good enemies, but that's to be expected seeing as, it's the very start of the series. To summarise, Oda's already showing us the great storytelling and writing that makes One Piece as amazing as it is. So many questions are already raised for the reader, some of which are still unanswered to this day. All things considered, let's see how it scores. For setting and environment, I've given it a 4 out of 10. While the introduction to the series is iconic and memorable, the locations themselves are actually pretty forgettable. For significance on plot, this has to be a 10 out of 10. Luffy starting his crew, getting his first mate, getting his straw hat and his devil fruit ability, as well as the motive to give Shanks back that hat one day, when he becomes a legendary pirate. For impact on Luffy and the crew, it has to be a 10 out of 10. The crew itself is actually formed in this arc, as well as the addition of Zoro and Luffy getting his devil fruit powers. In terms of the number of impactful moments in this arc, out of 10, I'd give it an 8. When you think about it, there's so many things here that are really iconic and keep being brought up again and again throughout the show. We meet Shanks for the first time, Luffy sets sail, Luffy gets his devil fruit, Shanks loses an arm, we meet Zoro, Zoro eats the onigiri, Kobe joins the Navy soldiers saluting the guys as they leave Shellstown, and probably, most importantly, we get to meet Ben Beckman. Fuck you, this is my video, I'll do what I want. As I've already said, this arc was incredibly short and jam-packed with information, therefore the pacing is a 10 out of 10. Villains and final fight, honestly, Alvida, Axhan Morgan, Himelpo, all trash, don't really care about them too much. 3 out of 10. For action, I'll give it a 4 out of 10, nothing really spectacular here, but that's what you'd expect from such an early arc. For emotional depth, I'd actually give it a 4 out of 10, purely based on the Shanks scene where he loses his arm. And then for the final 2 categories, personal enjoyment and the general opinion, I've got to say, and there's definitely an element of nostalgia here for me, but I really like Romance Dawn as an arc, and although a lot of people would disagree and say this is too high, for my personal enjoyment, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. And then if I had to guess, I'd say that most people do like this arc, and do look back on it fondly. Because of the amount of information at the start of the series, and because of how short and condensed it is, it's actually quite a good arc to go back and watch. That, plus looking at people's opinions online, I'd say the general opinion of Romance Dawn is a 7 out of 10. Add up all our scores, and Romance Dawn gets an overall score of 68 out of 100, which honestly, I think is pretty accurate. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you enjoyed, please give the video a like, comment below your rating of Romance Dawn, and please consider subscribing to the Great Onigiri Man channel in order to see future videos on every other arc. I'll see you guys on the next one, where we'll be looking at Orange Town.